Hey, this is Evan Longoria of your San Francisco Giants, and you're listening to TortureCast.
You're listening to a podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Let's go, Giants! With hosts Willie Dills, Chad King, Ben Lee, and Eric Nathanson. Dedicated to the greatest team in Major League Baseball, the San Francisco Giants. This is TortureCast. Standing on time, not gonna stop. We came to play, ain't slowing down. Falling on, we're here to stay, and we're stomping on whatever's in our way. I'm feeling like a Giant tonight.
It's Monday, August 27th, 2018, and this is episode 151 of the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. I'm your host, Chad King, and joining me today from Georgia, he just recently got his air conditioning fixed, and so he's much more comfortable right now. But Eric Nathanson, what's up, dude?
Not much. My apologies to our listeners for missing last week. The guys were here literally installing the air conditioning, so now I won't be as jaded for the rest of the season. So, you can appreciate it. So one little hiccup just to keep things running.
Yeah, and so you won't be a sweaty, angry person this time. I mean, we'll be angry about other things about the Giants right now, but at least you won't be angry about that. All right, so we have a special guest today. His name is Ryan Leong. He's been covering Bay Area teams since 1998, and he's freelancing for major sports radio networks, including ESPN and CBS Sports Radio, Associated Press Radio, and NBC News Radio. And he's covered all of the major events, including Super Bowls and other things. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Chad, and good joining you as well, Eric.
Good to have you, Ryan.
So Ryan has been covering teams, obviously, since 98, so he's been doing this for 20 years or so. And he was actually one of the first guys I met in the press box. I think it was late 2011. I guess it was early 2012, actually. It was 2012 where I attended my first game. And just, Ryan, I want to say, I don't think I've ever told you this, but, everybody kind of has their own place in the press box, and people know each other. But a lot of people kind of keep to themselves as they're prepping their stuff and writing and getting things ready. And, like, you just saw a new face, and you immediately came over and was like, hey, I'm Ryan. What's your name? What are you doing? Where are you from? And you totally showed me the ropes. You gave me a lot of good advice, and just over the years, you've been really great about welcoming me and others into the press box. And I just want to personally thank you for that, because not many other people were kind of like that. Not that they were rude or mean. It's just that you were very outgoing and very welcoming. So I just want to say that Ryan was kind of one of the first guys I kind of became friends with in the press box. So that was very, very cool of you, Ryan.
I appreciate that, Chad. Yeah, it's just weird that I guess I kind of go against the norm of what people do in the press box, which is unfortunate because it seems like everybody's got some kind of, I don't know, they're like they have some kind of social anxiety disorder, which makes it perfect to be in the press box. I don't know. Perfect.
Yeah, so Ryan's done a lot of cool stuff. He covers the Giants. He covers the A's. He's been to Super Bowls. He covers Warriors games. I always seen really cool photos of him down in center court after the finals, or, at Super Bowl 50 at Levi Stadium, and all these really, really cool things. So I like to live vicariously through him. I get a taste of it with Giants games, but that's about it. But it's pretty cool stuff. So definitely check Ryan out. What's your Twitter handle again?
It's just my name, at Ryan Leong, RyanLeong.
Cool. All right, so Ryan definitely knows a lot about the Giants and many other teams, and we're just going to launch right into this and include him in the broadcast here. So, Giants, 2 weeks ago we were feeling pretty bad about their chances, but they were still kind of hanging on at 4.5, 5 games back in that time frame. Not so much anymore. Since we recorded, they've gone 6-7. They're now 2 games under 500 for the season. 8 full games back of Arizona in 4th place, and of course 8 games behind the wild card, which really doesn't matter at this point. Colorado is only a game back of Arizona, and LA is 2.5 back, with San Diego bringing up the rear at 23.5 games back. So, with 30-something games to go, it's not looking at all possible for the Giants to make the playoffs, and we already signed them off 2-3 weeks ago. But man, what is this team to going forward? We got a lot of things to cover today. But at this point, we have September call-ups coming up soon. We'll get into the Buster Posey injury and Jeff Samardzija, and he might be shut down for the year. But at this point, my opinion is, hey, they've already thrown in the towel, raised the white flag, given up on the season. So my point of view is just play the young guys. Just keep playing the young guys at this point.
It's been fun to see guys like Duggar and Slater and stuff like that step up, even when the team isn't necessarily playing up to their full capabilities. But I mean, putting Buster down for the season, that was the white flag that we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, it's go ahead, Ren.
I think the Giants' biggest problem all year has been a problem of sort of like self-denial. I mean, the Giants, as you guys know, have had the second highest payroll in baseball the entire season. And when Buster was announced that he was going to have this cortisone shot at the All-Star break, they probably should have shut him down then. But I think because the team has such a high payroll and the expectations are so high, just given the Giants being the franchise that they are, and of course, you guys know the 3 World Series in the 5-year span, they probably feel that they're obligated to compete at the highest level, even though, unfortunately, and I don't want to knock the front office, but it's pretty obvious that these guys do a terrible job of how they budget their money, right? I mean, most other teams that have a high payroll, they're getting production out of their team, or at least to the point where they're well within competing for a division or a wild card. And the Giants, look where they are. So it's really unfortunate at this point that we're talking about how it's good to see the young guys, but like you said, when you're 8 games back, what choice do you have?
Yeah, you make a really good point about the payroll, and we've touched on that before. But I mean, what the Giants have done, just off the top of my head, over the last 4 or 5 years, especially after this run of World Series titles, they certainly paid a lot of players who gave them that success, who performed at that level that they expected someone to earn, $15 to $20 million a year. It was almost like a bonus, a thank you gift, hey, this is great. Hopefully you can continue your production, but I think a lot of us did see kind of the writing on the wall for a lot of players. But you had guys, Barry Zito is one of the few exceptions where they just signed him out of free agency. But you get Tim Lincecum and Matt Cain and Brandon Crawford and Buster Posey and Madison Bumgarner. And they obviously signed Mark Melancon not as a thank you. That was just a bad free agent signing so far. And others where it was kind of a payment of like a thank you, here's your reward. And their production just tailed off. And they've been hamstrung with those massive contracts. And I'm not saying that Madison Bumgarner isn't worth it. He's unfortunately been bit by 2 major injury bugs, one of them his own fault on the motorcycle, and of course the line drive at the end of spring training. You get Buster Posey, who everybody thinks the world of him, but the last few years his power has just completely evaporated. Hopefully because of this hip issue, and we'll see next year if this surgery actually helps him drive the ball and use his legs a little bit more. But yeah, it's taken up a roster spot, lack of production, and it's just inflated to the second highest payroll, and the Giants just need to shed it. And it's going to be hard because they've also exhausted a lot of their minor league system. They haven't really replenished it too well. They have one of the lower rated minor league systems in the entire league, and they're far from being like Houston Astros, who have all these up-and-coming minor leaguers that they restocked with many years ago, and now they're reaching that crescendo of performance with these guys that we're seeing just performing so well, like your Correas and Bregmans and Altuves and others. So I think that's the model a lot of teams are going to now, is go ahead and take the hit, take your 3, 4, 5 years of rebuilding, but then you get these cheap minor leaguers, if you draft well, who perform at that level, and then you can sustain that for a good portion of time and select who you're going to pay while they're still young.
Right, exactly. Yeah, no, they're in a quandary. I mean, it's really sad, and the Giants themselves keep sort of playing the same broken record where you get Bochy saying, hey, we're doing the best we can competing, and we don't score a lot of runs, but we're in all these games, and we're just going to give it our best. And I mean, okay, great, but it's just, I don't know. I think it just speaks to a problem that the Giants have had with their ballpark ever since it opened. And as we all know, the only guy that's ever really been able to hit with any kind of power in there is Barry Bonds. And, substance enhanced or not, he's been the only guy to do so. And I think ever since he's played for the team, Buster Posey's MVP season notwithstanding, I mean, they've not had a guy who hit 30 home runs in that for the team. And the way it seems to be going for that team, they're not going to hit 30 home runs, it seems, ever again either, or have a guy who's going to hit 30 home runs.
Yeah, the only way they're going to do that is if they make a serious run at like Bryce Harper in the offseason, or, down the road, Joey Bart shows to be the guy. But nobody is clamoring. It shows the Giancarlo Stanton rejecting the trade last year, really shows how players view the Giants and their ballpark. And it's frustrating because, Chad, you mentioned all the money they've got tied up. They got Melanson for 2 more years. They've got heavy contracts with, Posey, which is deserved. Samardzija and Cueto will be pulling down $40 million combined next year, and you can't bank on either of them. So they've been handcuffed to even pursue those players that might make that kind of impact. And it's tough to see how they're going to be able to do it again. Like, Ryan, let me ask you, do you think that them pursuing Bryce Harper is a real possibility?
I think it is, but I don't see him coming to San Francisco unless he somehow is convinced by, I guess, Dusty Baker, of course, was his manager, and I guess there's somebody else from the Nationals who's with the Giants now. Unless those 2 guys can convince Harper to play here, and even if he comes here, I don't see him as the guy that's going to be able to duplicate something like Barry Bonds did. And I was not a huge fan of Bonds, but that guy could produce, and he never really had any really measurable slumps. I mean, Bryce Harper's had a pretty bad year, and he's playing in a stadium that's a pretty fair ballpark. He comes to San Francisco. He's not going to have that on his side. I mean, granted, you can hit home runs at AT&T Park, but it seems that the reason I think opposing teams do so well more often than the Giants is because it doesn't get in their head, and they're only here for like a 3 or a 4 game series at the most, right? So for those guys, it's like a little tour, right? I mean, they come in for their 3 or 4 games and they're out of here, and they're done with the place for either the year or for several months.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing to see these salaries here when you look at it. Buster Posey leads the team with a $22.17 million. This is just figures for this year, by the way, 2018. Johnny Cueto at $21 million, Jeff Samardzija at $19.8, Pablo and Julian Fernandez at $545. So on the DL right now, $64 million in salary. And behind that, you have Mark Melanson at 20, Hunter Pence at 18.5, Brandon Belt at 17.2, Brandon Crawford at 15.2, McCutchen at 14.7, Longoria 13.5, Mad Bum at 12, which of course, they're talking about either trading him or renegotiating that contract. You just look at these numbers and they're just so massive. And every one of these guys has been on the DL. Melanson, Pence, Belt, Crawford's really the only exception. McCutchen is just 1 year. Longoria, of course, got hurt. Mad Bum got hurt. You got Buster. You got Cueto. You got Samardzija. I mean, the highest paid players are all on the DL. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, as you were talking about that, Chad, I'm just looking at the numbers for Bryce Harper, and I mean, he's had another consistent season, I guess, by his standards. Although it's funny how the guy's never driven in 100 runs. Although I guess he has a chance this year. He's currently got 30 homers and 84 RBIs. He's batting just a shade under 250. So, but I don't know, man. I just don't see this guy succeeding in San Francisco if the Giants were to get him.
No, the problem.
Go ahead, Eric.
Well, I was going to say the problem is, and the only reason that this is cropping up is because after all those injuries Chad just mentioned, there's no young guys to step up and take those places. It seems to be few and far between when they're finding a Duggar or a Slater or somebody like that. And I think that's why Giants fans are entertaining the idea of seeing Bryce Harper in the Bay. But, I'm with you, Ryan. I don't see how he'd want to hit in that ballpark. I don't see how any free agent would want to come hit in that ballpark. It does get in their head, and it's crazy because it's such a jewel. It's so beautiful. Fans love it. The press loves it. The players love it, except for the fact that it's, like a cavern at times.
Yeah, and they built it. Yeah, and they built it in a way that, even if you look down the line, as you guys know, granted, there's a number of splash hits that have been hit, but I know for sure a right-handed hitter in my mind has still never hit the water. Nope. A right-handed hitter has only hit the arcade maybe a dozen times, I want to say, and that's over almost a 20-year period. So that's a lot. The ballpark's been there a while now. People forget. I mean, it's not just this brand new ballpark. It's been there almost 20 years.
Yeah, Brian Sabean, I don't have his quotes right in front of me, but he was interviewed 5-6 days ago, and that's he laid it out. He said free agent power hitters don't want to come here. We're hamstrung, and why would they? Because they know their power numbers are going to drop. And, you could want to come to a team like San Francisco if you think they're built for a world championship. But I think guys like Giancarlo and others, and certainly now the Giants are on this 2.5, 3 year downturn. No one sees the Giants as a pennant contender now. And so there's even less incentive for any power hitter to come here until the Giants start rebuilding to that team that those power hitters may go, hey, I'll sacrifice 5 to 10 or whatever home runs a year if I think this team's really going to win a world championship. Because, the bottom line is most players are really, really, they consider their salaries as one of the main things, and the production and their numbers contributes and dictates what salaries they earn into the future. So if you sign a 3, 4, 5 year contract with San Francisco and your power numbers plummet, well, that's going to hurt your future market value. So it's understandable. And I'm curious. I know that Larry Baer and others have completely denied any possibility of bringing in the fences, but plenty of parks have done that, including Comerica, which was just as cavernous as AT&T. And they've brought in the fences. A few other parks have done the same thing. So I'm just curious if this continues and they really have this long-term problem not being able to sign a power hitter since Barry Bonds, are they ever going to bring in the fences? Are they ever going to cut off Triple's alley? I think that might be a possibility in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think so too. And the thing is, I don't know. Maybe they could figure out a way to reconstruct the ballpark slightly. I mean, they could still keep a version of it intact, but I don't know. Maybe figure out a way to rebuild it. But I don't know exactly how you're going to do it. I mean, unless maybe you build more bleachers on the left field side and then still have a 421. I don't know. I mean, but it is pretty big because I think what's the left center one? Is it like 380?
I think it's 389 or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. 389. That's right. That's huge. I mean, that is. I mean, granted, when you think of old ballparks, even like, Yankee Stadium or you think of Tiger Stadium, and they had
especially the Polo Grounds.
Field, and of course, the Polo Grounds, right? But the Polo Grounds to left field was like 280.
Yeah,
it was,
really short.
It was a joke.
It was a short porch.
Nothing.
Yeah,
with an overhanging balcony.
Right. So every ballpark that's had a big center field has still had some kind of reachable power alleys. I think maybe the only exception I could think of is old Comiskey Park in Chicago, which they tore down back in 1990. But Tiger Stadium was a hitter's paradise. Granted, it had center field at 440, but it had great power alleys, and it was a great hitter's ballpark, and I was privileged enough to see one game there, and it was a great ballpark. So I just don't see how, the Giants are going to get that, because they really don't have – the Giants, to me, don't have any part of their ballpark, to me, that's really conducive for hitting a home run, except maybe in the daytime down the line. I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's 309 down the right field line, but having the 24-foot wall there, that doesn't help with that. You're decreasing those odds by making the wall so high. And trust me, we love the wall out there, but I have a hard time thinking they will reconfigure or do anything, because the perfect example is, hey, we won 3 World Series without screwing with the fences. Why can't we find a team to do that again? And that's just kind of typical Giants and the way they look at things.
Yeah,
right,
and that's the danger of it, though, because, we all know that, major leagues have really, really transitioned to this on-base percentage and home run kind of thing, right? Who cares about strikeouts? I mean, we have more strikeouts than hits now this year. For the first time, it looks like we're going to end the year like that. And so these guys are striking out at prodigious rates, but they're hitting fly balls. They have the shift. People still don't bunt against the shift because it still statistically makes sense for some of the power hitters to hit over the shift. And so the Giants have just not gone that route. Sure.
And if you look at the history of Major League strikeouts, I mean, that's one record that the other Bonds had for the longest time. Bobby Bonds, Barry's dad, had the single season strikeout record for, I think he had it for, was it 33 years or 34 years? And then since then it's been broken like 15 times.
Yeah.
So I think the record lasted until about 2003 maybe or so, and then I think Adam Dunn was the first guy to break it. And it's been broken by so many guys now. And I think the record now, is 223 by Mark Reynolds. But you got a ton of guys now willing to strike out about 200 times just to hit 30 home runs, and they don't care. I mean, even though that's a huge percentage of strikeouts, I think it's like 66% of the time you're striking out, but they don't care. I mean,
no.
And fans want to see it. And the funny thing is, when you mention the things like launch angle and home run distance and those things, those all came about actually right after or right around 2014. So basically, the Giants' last World Series is almost like the dead ball era when you compare it to the baseball of today.
It's more of a 3 true outcome sport at this point. There's a lot less balls in play, action, and things like that. And like Sabian talked about how the offense is stuck in the 1960s because they're doing stuff like that. I mean, how many times have we seen the Giants get a runner to third base with less than 2 outs and fail to score the runner? And it being such a constant problem for them, the thing to fix that is like the 3-run home run. I was watching a Cubs game this year. I watch a lot of them, but Len Casper and Jim Deshaies were talking about how teams have a higher win percentage when they hit a 3-run homer during the game. And you look at the Giants, and they've probably hit like 5 of them all season long. And you look at teams like, the Rangers happen to lose a game with a 3-run homer, but it makes a huge difference. Look at Saturday's game with Crawford hitting the 3-run bomb in the first inning. It changes the whole complexion of the game, and the Giants rarely are able to do that.
Yeah, it's really sad. I mean, but you're right though. And even then, they almost lost the game just because they couldn't score any more runs. I mean, they lucked out by getting that Hunter Pence home run, but yeah, bad offense.
Bad offense. Well, let's talk about that. So this week we'll concentrate a little bit more on, but just a quick review of the previous week, because that's the last time we recorded, but. So they went down to L.A. thinking, okay, if we sweep L.A. or take 2 out of 3 or win 7 out of 10 on this road trip, maybe we can hang in this race. And they won those first 2 in L.A. Very dramatic, high intensity, fun games. And, of course, they laid an egg on the third game, even though they had tied it up 3-3 in the 8th or whatever. But one of the fun things that happened was the fight between Nick Hundley and Puig. And I know it's a little bit old news, so I don't want to dwell too long on it. But we don't know exactly what Hundley said to Puig. Does anyone have any indications or feelings? Because even Hundley said, hey, what happens on the field stays on the field. But Puig certainly took the bait no matter what it was. And I think Hundley's such a veteran, and he knows Puig's a hothead. He might have baited him into that.
Oh, he did. From what I was told, and again, I don't know what was actually said, but it's something to the effect of like, get your butt back in the box and stop your whining or something like that. Was implied.
As somebody watching that series, it was funny. I noticed from the jump, Bum started the first game of the series, and every Puig at bat, when he did something that didn't result in good, he was slamming his bat to the ground. He was making overt gestures, and I'm sure Hundley said to him, get your ass back in the box, stop being a baby, let's play baseball. The pitchers get paid money too. Puig's out there acting like he's the only guy, that he's the only one that can do anything, and it's the end of the world when he can't. And I'm certain, Hundley said, get your ass back in the box, stop being a baby. And Puig, like you said, he's a hothead, and so he pushed the buttons of it. And it's funny because, that's so, childish from Yasiel Puig's part. Stand there and take it. Stop acting like a baby. I as a guy who was a mouthy catcher, I totally get what Hundley said. I had no problem telling batters and putting them in their place. But when they, can't handle it and they have to shove and then slap like that, I mean, Puig showed his true colors. I have personally defended him in the past because, he was young, but that was 5 years ago. He ain't young anymore.
Right. Yeah, I see both sides of it. I could see that there's part of it, too, where Hundley should probably maybe not say it, but that's a catcher's job, though. I mean, a catcher's constantly talking, and I think even though I've never been a catcher and I can only speak from a fictional movie like Bull Durham, what's Crash Davis doing in that movie the whole time, right? He's yapping at somebody. He's either talking to Nuke LaLoosh or he's yapping to the batters in the batter's box, right? Mm-hmm, he's saying stuff all the time, and that's just kind of their job. So I agree with you. The catcher is really he's really the field general he's really the general on the field itself.
Well, here's the thing. If Posey had been back there for that game, this fight never would have happened. I think Hundley said something because he knew Posey wasn't going to say something. You saw Bumgarner react after the first time he got Puig out in Game 1. He just kind of shook his head at Puig's reaction, and everybody's like, oh, that means that something's going to happen. And I think Hundley felt that, we need a spark. I'm going to get in this guy's face. And as a yappy catcher, I said a ton of stuff. I used to tell guys what pitch was coming, and they thought I was screwing with them. So when the curveball did come right through the middle of the strike zone, they'd be like, man, I thought you were going to throw me a fastball. I was like, well, then you're just stupid. So I'm sure.
Right, Eric, and because you're speaking like Crash Davis would in real life. So you're telling these batters what's coming, and And, it is kind of a mind game, but of course they didn't play along with it, and you happen to be telling the truth.
Yeah, it's almost like playing poker. The batter has to decide if the things you were saying to him are worthwhile or not. And apparently Puig is too stupid to differentiate them.
Right.
Yeah, Puig is just, man. I mean, he's a talented man. He has legs the size of tree trunks. He's physically talented. His shtick is just getting old. I mean, every time he fouls off a ball and he screams because he should have hit it out of the park. It's things like that. Even players are getting, tired of it. There's been a few players on KMBR that talk, including Kevin Franson and others, that are like, yeah, players, it's like, just get back in the box and hit. If you strike out, you pop up, you do. But every single pitch that you just miss, you can't just scream and yell. It's an old thing, and a lot of players lose respect for that. So, and I'm sure a lot of the Dodgers, are tired of his antics. They don't say it, they don't reveal it, but I'm sure they're just like, God, this guy again. Just take your medicine and sit down. It's not the end of the world, dude.
Yeah, I'm surprised his numbers haven't been better. I mean, he's basically what? I think he's hit 30 home runs. Has he even ever hit 30 home runs? I don't know if he has in a season. I mean, his production is far undervalued for what he should be for who he is.
Yeah, no, he's kind of a national baseball figure, but his production doesn't warrant that kind of representation. It's because he's sexy and it sells, and he's a great figure for Major League Baseball because of the controversy and everything else that happens. It sells highlights on ESPN, so he attracts that attention, warranted or not. That's just the way the world works.
Well, to put a button on this, I have a feeling that the Dodgers had no problem with Nick Hundley's actions. You didn't hear
say.
Yeah, you didn't hear any of them after the game saying Hundley needs to know his place and all that, and it's funny because the one bad thing that happened for the Giants as a result of that quote-unquote fight was losing to Derek Rodriguez for 10 days.
Yeah, he ended up missing 2 starts, and, Puig was fined 2 games or suspended 2 games, but the Giants paid more than the Dodgers did for that one.
I was going to say, I did look up his numbers. So he's hit 28 home runs as his season high, and his highest RBI total is 74. So again,
whoa, God, that's way lower than I thought. Yeah,
exactly right. And he's got his batting average is decent. It's a career 279 average, but this year he's batting 264. He's got 15 homers and 47 RBIs. So I mean, to me, those numbers are awfully average. I mean. Hey, you should play for the Giants. His power numbers aren't anything better than what the Giants.
All I could think when you said that, I was like, hell, he'd be leading.
Sounds like Giants numbers, yeah. That's like Andrew McCutchen right now. It's almost exactly what Andrew McCutchen's at. I think Andrew McCutchen's got like 54 RBIs, but he's got 15 home runs. He's hitting like 250, 60, whatever. It's the same thing. Unbelievable. Well, they took 2 out of 3 from LA. Things were looking okay, and then they went into Cincinnati, and that's where the season, the coffin was placed. The lid of the coffin was placed and was nailed because they got swept by Cincinnati. They had the first game, which was extra innings, and they lost the next 2. They were blown out, and they rolled right into New York and lost the first game. So at that point, they had lost 5 in a row, and that was it. That was it. They just buried themselves, and it was really unfortunate because so many people were looking forward to playing against Cincinnati and New York, who had worse records than the Giants, thinking, oh, we're going to beat up on them. But Cincinnati themselves, they're an offensive juggernaut, and they've swept the Dodgers in a 4-game series. They've swept the Phillies in a 3-game series. They do their damage when it works out and their pitching's adequate, and that's exactly what happened against the Giants. Of course, I'd say the Giants' offense probably helped that more than the Reds' pitching, but the fact of the matter is they got swept, and that pretty much started the ball rolling to getting Posey to kind of give up on the season and get a surgery and playing the younger guys more. But that was really the turning point. I would posit that if the Giants had somehow swept the Dodgers, took 2 out of 3 from Cincinnati, and maybe stole that 1 extra game from New York and won 3 out of 4 and won 7 or 8 games on that road trip, and they're 4 games back right now, maybe 3 games back, they feel like they're still in it, and maybe Posey isn't having surgery, but that was it. That was even Bobby Evans and Sabian and those guys said, yeah, go ahead and sail up the white flag. This isn't happening this year.
It's funny because right before that Cincinnati series, when they took the 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers, I saw you tweet, Chad, like a phoenix, because you were getting that feeling.
Yeah.
And then they scored 6 runs in 3 games against Cincinnati.
Yeah,
the New York series. I'm with you. The Monday was kind of the final nail in the coffin when what was that matchup? They lost the game late in 13 innings after such a tough weekend. Or did they win that one? Oh, they won.
Oh no,
first
I'm sorry.
game of
So they lost 4 in a row. You're right. They lost. They won the first one, lost the next 2, and then won the fourth game.
Oh, that's right. They won on that screwed up pop up a week ago. That's what
yeah. The Mets did drop that ball. They could have lost 3 out of 4 that weekend.
I mean, now that it's funny because they came home and they suddenly turned it on again, quote unquote, with Texas. Because that Mets series, as much as they did take 2 out of 4, it felt like they, lost or got swept. And it just kind of fell right in line. They haven't scored more than 6 runs in a game since Friday, August 10th.
Yeah. No, it's been a while. A couple of positives out of that New York series. Of course, you had Kelly getting the start. He only gave up 2 earned runs in 6 innings, so he's actually looked pretty decent in his tenure with the Giants. His career ERA is still over 5. I don't have any long-term confidence in the guy, but he's been kind of a stopgap. And then, of course, you had Madison Bumgarner pitching a gem, 8 innings, 1 earned run, 5 hits, 8 Ks, and he had an RBI double in that last game against New York. And then they came home to get some home cooking because we know they have one of the worst road records in the major leagues, certainly the NL. And it's just really frustrating because you can't play on the road. You're not going to win in the playoffs, let alone make the playoffs. But that game 1, man, I mean, I tell you what, if this is a season in which they're close to winning the West or a wild card, this is one of those games you'd look back on and just go, mother trucker. I mean, they 2 outs, 9th inning, Will Smith on the mound, 2-run lead, routine ground ball to Joe Panic, and he boots it. Gives him that extra life, and Odor comes up and hits the game-tying home run with 2 outs. They go on to get another run in the 7th. And by the way, after a couple of walks and a couple of hits in the inning, they walked in the go-ahead run, and they lost 7-6. That was just one of those games where you just kind of go, another blown save. Granted, that wasn't because of the pitching; it was because the defense gave them the opportunity. But 27th blown save in the major leagues leads the majors. I mean, they're on their way to 30 blown saves, which is by far their franchise record. So. They haven't lost all those games, of course. We've talked about that. Sometimes they've come back and won their blown saves, but at the same time, they've shown they don't have the affinity to close games out. And especially a lot of these games, they led that game 6-0, 6-0, and they lost 7-6. And it's just this inability to close out games, not only pitching-wise and defensively, but offensively in terms of they had more opportunities. They had bases loaded with nobody out. Another game later, they had runners at first and third with nobody out, and they couldn't score. And these are the opportunities that are completely wasted. I mean, Major League scores like 87% of the time with a runner at third and no outs. So, and they're just failing miserably at it lately.
It's like that other 13% is all the Giants. That's kind of funny.
Yeah, they're skewing the stats for the major leagues.
Should be like 95%, but there's the Giants.
Well, I'm just looking right now. You guys are mentioning. I'm just looking at the some of the road records you guys are talking about, and yeah, you see what the Giants are. I mean, they're pretty bad. I mean, although some of the teams that are doing okay in the East, for instance, I guess the Phillies are the only example. I mean, the Phillies have a pretty similar road record to the Giants, and they're right there with the Braves. But I think that's probably gonna bite Philly at some point too, just because again, if you don't have a 500 record on the road, you just don't have a chance.
Yeah, you generally don't. I actually did a piece on this earlier this year, and I found that not a single team over the last since 2012, not a single team won the World Series with a losing road record, and only 12 teams made the playoffs with a losing road record, and the Tigers were the only ones to make it to the World Series. So it's kind of indicative of a team and whether or not they can play in stressful situations, how they do on the road. Mm-hmm. I mean, we see teams like Miami at the bottom of the list, and like you mentioned, Ryan, Philly. That's what makes me wonder about Philly come playoff time if they manage to make it. I'm not so sure they're going to be able to hang because of things like that.
Yeah, their road record right now is equivalent as far as the number of road wins the Giants have, which is 29. I mean, granted, they played 2 fewer games, but their road record right now is 29-38, and they're the only team I'm looking at right now that's first or second. Although, well, Minnesota's way too far back, but they're second place in their division, but their road record's even worse than the Giants. But yeah, those teams exactly. They all basically have a winning record on the road. I don't think anybody's even really at 500. They have winning records. They're either winning records or they're losing records.
Well, I mean, one positive I can take out for the last week or so is all 3 games against Texas, starting pitching was excellent. And really, all 4 games in New York, the starting pitching was excellent too. They lost those games late, those 2 games late. It's been pretty good for the Giants in terms of starting pitchers' ERA. I mean, in terms of overall pitching, which includes the blown saves and everything like that, we're talking the Giants have a 3.62 ERA since the break, which is 6th best in the National League. That includes their relievers, but starters have been much, much better. So I will take that into account as being a positive sign. You had Derek Rodriguez throwing fire again in Game 1. Suarez with another hell of a game, even though his ERA is over 5 in the second half. He had 7 innings of no shutout ball, and of course Derek Holland hasn't lost since early July, and he had another 6 1/3 innings with 1 earned run and 3 hits. So there's been some positives. I don't know how much this will carry into next year, except for, of course, D-Rod is going to be, boy, talk about coming out of left field, though. I mean, he's just a guy that no one really had any expectations for, and he has just blown the doors off everyone's expectations, and he's been one of the few surprises this year.
Did you mean to make the pun of coming out of left field, since isn't that where he used to play?
That's right.
He's been great. He's been fantastic. I mean, unfortunately for him, how many of his wins have been blown by the bullpen so far? 1, 2,
3.
So he should be about a 10-game winner, maybe.
Yeah. I'm gonna look at the game notes. That'll tell me.
Yeah, but no, he's pitched great. I mean, he's given what you want out of any pitcher these days, which is what? Pitching into the 7th inning pretty much every start, giving up 2 runs or fewer in every start. I mean, pretty much right there alone is pretty much a recipe for, at least, if not winning the game, to be in line for the win.
Yeah. It's crazy because he's like the new combination of Lincecum and Kane. In the sense that when Rodriguez is starting, I'm not worried. I'm not concerned. I'm not like, oh, crap, this guy's going today. Like, I'm generally very comfortable when Rodriguez is starting and I tune in. I make it a point to tune into his starts. And then, so it's Timmy in that way. But then the team fails to score runs for him, or the bullpen doesn't hold the 1-run sliver of a lead that they have because the offense sucks. And so he gets screwed out of his win, or, gets a no decision, or gets a loss on a 2-1 game if possible. So he's kind of like a combination of the two of them, not to overstate the Timmy part of it. And it's just interesting to watch because like you said, Chad, nobody expected this. And the fact that he, I think Friday really, really sucks. Because it was against his dad's team. The team was up 6-0. He only allowed the 2 runs in the 5th inning, so he should have been able to get through that. And the bullpen just absolutely – I mean, I know Panic's mistake, but the bullpen and the hitting just absolutely failed him. But, I mean, Derek Rodriguez is the biggest positive from the 2018 season.
Yeah,
sure.
Nobody's
going to argue that.
Yeah, it's too bad we missed those 2 games with him, but, again, didn't change the Giants season, that's for sure.
No.
Might have lost those games anyway, just like what happened in Game 1 against Texas.
And it's unbelievable. Joe Panik. Like, what happened to Joe Panik? He's just not the same player that he's been. He started off the season great. Obviously, he was, Babe Panik to start. And then ever since he got injured, he hasn't been able to be the same guy. He's made errors this year that he has never made in the past. He's not squaring up balls as much. A lot of balls are coming off the end of the bat, and he's popping the ball up a lot more than we used to see out of Joe. It's hard to put the finger on why he's, suddenly regressed, but I think it absolutely makes him a trade candidate for the offseason.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, is that, we thought he was the second baseman of the future, and he just hasn't performed at the level we expected, and so I could totally consider him potential trade bait. Not like he's earning a lot of money, but he's expendable, I'd say, at this point.
Well, that's why he's trade bait, because he's not earning a lot of money just yet.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
It's funny, too, isn't it, how he had, 2 home runs in the first 2 games?
Yep. 1-0
he led the National League with 3 home runs at one point, which we knew wasn't going to last, but he's hit, what, like 1 or 2 since?
None. 0.
Wait, he still have 3 home runs?
Yep.
Oh, my God. That was like in the first week of the season. It's insane.
Yeah. You guys are right. I don't know what's happened to him either. I mean, he came out like gangbusters in 2014, and it seemed, like you said, it seemed to be well on his way to being the second baseman of the future. And he actually, he had what was it? I guess his first few seasons were pretty good, right? I mean, then just kind of nothing. Yeah, I mean, although he was pretty good last year, all things considering, for such a bad Giants team. But this year, yeah, he's right there with the rest of the Giants players as far as batting under 250 and kind of, just an invisible bat in the lineup.
Okay, I take it back. He did hit a 4th home run this year, and for the life of me, I couldn't tell you when he did it.
Right, but still, I mean.
All right, well, one more. That's it.
Yeah. He doesn't even have 20 RBIs though. It's like, and again, he's, like I said, he's an invisible bat in a lineup of 8. It's like, it's just, but that could be a lot of guys in the Giants, right? It's kind of sad.
Yeah, it seems to be the constant theme. Although, like this weekend with the pitching, I don't know if we want to get around to. We can. Derek Holland pitched on Sunday, and it was his first home start after he just embarrassed himself over the past week. And I don't know who, Ryan, you said you watched it. Derek Holland was on Intentional Talk, I believe it was, on MLB Network.
Yeah, and I found out about it after the fact because of people complaining about it and seeing stories about it on Deadspin, and there was a writer from Bleacher Report who happens to be Asian. I can't remember his ethnicity. I don't think he may be Korean.
Sensitive remarks made, and I don't know if we.
Yeah, but he complained about it, and so I watched the skit, and it just. I wouldn't say it's overtly racist, but I would just say it's just kind of like, what was he thinking? It's like, where are you going with this? It just you use some racial stereotypes and tried to make a really poor attempt to be funny. And I think while Derek Holland has the ability to be funny, I find him more often than not trying too hard. And not only just this incident, I find in general sometimes he tries too hard.
Yeah. Yeah, so Eric and I had seen that on Twitter and on the internet, but we just watched it before the show to kind of talk about it. And it was a very uncomfortable, not performance, although it was technically a performance. It was a shtick. He had one of, I believe, Ryan, you said he was one of the massage therapists. And I guess he's a long-time Giants employee, and he's kind of beloved in the clubhouse. He's some sort of massage therapist or physical therapist with the team. And it was a bit of a shtick between the two because he's Asian. So you Google it, watch it yourself. I'm not going to include it in the podcast, but it was a lot of bowing and a lot of, Asian kind of inflection in the voice and everything like that Derek Holland was doing. And it wasn't overtly racist, but it was very 1950s, 1960s kind of, this is how Asian people talk.
And even to go back to like one of my favorite movies as a kid, I used to love watching the Police Academy movies. And even those movies, if you watch it even today, some of the racial humor that goes on, it's still pretty funny. So obviously this is Derek Holland's poor attempt at trying to, reach an audience when he just really was way off the mark. So, and part of it, again, goes to the fact that we are in 2018, and if you are going to do something of this nature, you really, this is why I hate to say this, but, he's a professional athlete, not a professional comedian. Maybe someday he'll aspire to be Bob Uecker, but right now he's not.
Yeah, no, it's sad because you're right. He is funny at times. He does, great impressions. He did the whole, voting thing at the All-Star break or before the All-Star break. He oiled up as a wrestler and was trying to get everyone to vote for Brandon Belt for the Fifth Man. And he's done a lot of funny things over the time. He does a great Harry Carey impression, all those things, but he just tried way too hard. And it was a train wreck, and it was sad to see. He did issue, look, I don't know if it's sincere or not, but he issued an apology saying that he tried to be funny, and he realized it wasn't funny, and it was a shtick with the other guy, and he participated in it too. He was doing some of the bowing and everything too, so he was kind of along for the ride. But it was a poor attempt on national television, and it is what it is. So I don't think it's as, it certainly is not like some of the other players whom I won't mention, who they've gone back and found some of these racist tweets from 4 years ago and stuff. They've uncovered where like they were using actual bad words and things of that nature, and they've been disciplined by Major League Baseball to have sensitivity training and that kind of thing. Not quite that bad, but at the same time, it definitely, at minimum, was racially insensitive. So
yes, I would totally agree. And I think, honestly, unless he wants to be thought of like Bob Uecker, and let's be honest, okay, Bob Uecker is a Hall of Fame baseball announcer, right? His baseball catching career was not very good. And funny thing is,
not very good.
You know, when people talk about the Mendoza line, they should really be calling it the Uecker line, because Bob Uecker's lifetime batting average was 200. And I don't think Derek Holland is the kind of person who wants to belittle his baseball career. So that being said, I don't understand why he doesn't just, honestly, for lack of a better comparison here, he should just shut up and pitch, right?
Yeah.
Because he wants to make a name for himself as a pitcher, not as a comedian.
No, it's true, and that's the thing. He's been performing well this year for the Giants. I mean, especially in the second half, he's been really, really, really good, and so this kind of derailed some of that. He did come out though and pitch well in Game 3, so at least it looks like the hubbub was not a distraction to his pitching performance on Sunday, so that was good.
No, that was a big start for him too.
Yeah, and so I just think, again, if he really starts to pay more attention to what he's doing on the mound, I think he shouldn't have to try to seek approval in the way he's been doing it. I really think, you know, he's already got the fact that fans already appreciate what he's doing, because, as you guys have already pointed out, that we've talked about in this podcast for over the last half hour, there aren't a lot of positives on this 2018 squad. He's been one of them. You know, try to get over this really poor attempt at what you did for humor, and yeah, just go back to focus on pitching. And I think, like you said, you know, the start he had was good. Let's see if he can, you know, if he can back that up with another start.
Yep.
I mean, I've enjoyed watching him this year because he's been a breath of fresh air in the clubhouse. But, you know, stuff like this that comes out, it's like you said, he's trying too hard. And I think it's a product of, like you said, 2018. Derek's very active on Twitter. Like, I've interacted with him a few times on stuff. I actually got into a fight with a Dodgers writer because of Derek Holland. And I think he's trying too hard to be like, I don't want to say Hunter Pence, but the type of personality that Hunter is, you know, he's got a following, he's on Twitch. And I think Holland's just a product of this day and age and the things that he's trying to do.
Yeah, that's why a lot of players have deleted their Twitter accounts. They don't even want to get involved in anything, right? They're like, I'm just going to go back in my little hovel and hide from anything. I'll be racist in my own private life. All right, so one thing that happened over the last 2 weeks was Andrew McCutchen was placed on revocable waivers, and there was a point where he was not seen in the lineup, he was not seen in the clubhouse, and everybody surmised that he had been claimed and they were trying to work out a deal. Apparently that did not happen. Of course, he's been playing with the Giants since. So we all are not privy to potentially there was a team who kicked the tires and contacted the Giants, and maybe that accounted for the pause in his absence. Maybe not. We don't know. But I was mildly surprised that he didn't go somewhere. I mean, he is earning $14 million this year, so it would have been that prorated part of his contract, especially for a team that is mostly certain heading for the playoffs or very close to heading for the playoffs that needs outfield help. But as it turns out, it looks like it's not going to happen. So the Giants are going to ride out the rest of the year with Andrew McCutchen. Most likely, I would presume, you guys can put in your 2 cents. He probably won't be with the team next year, but what do you guys think?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. I mean, he seems like another piece that was given to the team because he didn't seem like the kind of player, nor did Evan Longoria, as 2 guys that would come to the Giants unless they were traded here, which is what happened. So, you know, I really think that's unfortunately going to continue to be the Giants' MO, getting back to what we talked about earlier with the ballpark and their payroll, is that the only way the Giants are going to succeed is that they keep trying to get guys that are somehow traded to the team and sort of forced to be here, as opposed to signing here on their own via free agency.
I can see a scenario, though, where Kutch comes back on a smaller deal next year, because he seems to personally like the Bay Area and the fans and even his teammates. He seems to like the Giants organization, but, you know, who knows how much of that is smoke and how much of that is not. It's not – I don't even mind that the Giants didn't trade him because, I mean, what's the point for the Giants? I can't imagine they're going to get great prospects back at this point. There's no Sean Anderson to be found in this trade. So I can understand why the Giants, nobody else went for it, and the Giants are like, okay, well, we put it out there and nobody wants it, so we'll just ride out the season with them. Although, that being said, I hope when September rolls around, we see Shaw out there.
Yeah, no, Chris. Yeah, I could see that happening. The funny thing is McCutchen, no one would say he's had an outstanding season. But when you look at the stats for the team, this is really sad. It's sad to say, but he leads the team in home runs and RBIs and runs scored. So he's been valuable to the Giants in terms of relative production. Certainly not relative to league leaders in the National League or the major leagues, but he's been very valuable to the Giants this year. If it wasn't for McCutchen, I'm sure they would have lost another 3, 4, 5 games this year. So he's definitely been valuable, but to the extent of his salary that dictates it at $14 million, probably not. But the Giants are going to be faced with that decision in the offseason, assuming he isn't traded here before the deadline because he cleared waivers. But I don't presume that him and his agent are going to take anything less than 10 for sure, if not more than that.
It really is kind of interesting to see how much of a catch-22 the Giants are in, because again, like we've all agreed,
catch-22, I'd say.
Yeah, there you go, catch-22. Yeah, they appropriate. But here it is, a franchise that's one of the storied ones in baseball, right? One of the top, I don't know, 6 maybe, I guess you could say. And yet every year now, especially since 2014, they've really struggled to find an identity. I mean, and you guys could of course agree that each one of the World Series that they did win, they kind of lucked into in some way, shape, or form. I mean, they really weren't ever considered to be a favorite to win any of those World Series that they did, and yet somehow they did manage to win them. So it adds to their franchise appeal. But again, where does that put them in the grand scheme of things, right?
Yeah, they're right in the middle. It's weird to me that the Giants, being one of the tentpole franchises I look at them like on the American League side, you got the Yankees, you got the Red Sox. On the National League side, you've kind of got the Dodgers and the Giants that are those same tentpole teams.
Cardinals. I'd put the Cardinals in there.
That's true. The Cardinals as well. I was trying to think of a third American League team to compare with the Cardinals as well, because the Cardinals are there. They have 11 World Championships. They're going to be there. But
I mean, honestly, in an odd way, you could probably put the A's there. But the A's, the weird thing for them is half of their world titles came when they were in Philadelphia, and that's why you don't really think of them as much, because when you look at the A's, their time in Kansas City really kind of ruined their history a little bit, because they became when you become a city that has, or rather a franchise that's moved twice, you remove something when you become a third city, going to a third city as opposed to a second city. That makes sense?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I think in a lot of ways the A's, to me, their history is about as rich as the Giants. But again, because of the time they spent in Kansas City, none of which was good, and they never had a winning season when they were in KC, they've lost a lot of their history in that regard, because I would personally put the Philadelphia A, or rather the Oakland A's, in that category. But again, because of the fact that they missed so much time between the time they were in Philly and the time they moved to Oakland, a lot of their history with Connie Mack and some of the great players of that era get lost.
Yeah, I agree with that wholeheartedly, because the Kansas City A's were nothing more than a farm team for the New York Yankees during their time there, and it took moving to Oakland to re-energize the franchise and win the 3 world titles back in the 70s. I could agree with you, though. It got lost because of those Kansas City years. It's tough. People forget that the A's were in Philadelphia. And It's funny because the Braves are another team that fall victim to that, too. The Braves started in Boston, moved to Milwaukee, and ended up in Atlanta. And people have a hard time remembering that they've been around for so long for that reason. But to bring it back around to the Giants, the Giants should be looked at as the Yankees, Red Sox, Dodgers, Cardinals are looked at, and based on the way the game is played today, it's like you said, they have no identity. You can't stand on the 3 World Series titles anymore because most of those guys are gone. And it's tough to be like, yes, this is what it is. But to me, it also goes back to, this is why the Giants are not tearing it all down. Because when you tear it all down, there's no guarantee that you're going to get back to contention. And for some reason, Giants fans seem to think that tearing it all down is that magical solution. Well, what if they tear it all down and for 10 years they lose, straight? We all lived through the 80s. We lived through the Bonds years when they were horrible. Why would you want to go back to that? And the Giants are a team that needs to, find that identity and retool, because they refuse to completely rebuild. And I honestly, I don't blame them. I really don't. You've still got, certain guys with Posey and Bumgarner. You've got upcoming guys. We're going to see Joey Bart in a couple of years, I'm sure. So they need to find that identity. And I'd venture to say, Ryan, on the lucking in, 2012 was the only year that the Giants should have gotten respect heading into the playoffs, because to me that was the best team of the three. And even going back and looking, everybody picked the Tigers to win that World Series, even though the Giants were like 5 games better than the Pirates in the regular season. And it's like they get no respect. They're the Rodney Dangerfield of Major League Baseball.
Yeah, there's some truth to that, sure, and especially since 2014, because each one of the World Series and in the way in which they went through the postseason, somehow, some way, they did get lucky, right? I got kind of speaking revisionist history, but in 2010, they got past the Phillies when no one thought that was possible. Once the Giants did that, they were pretty much home free. In 2012,
although down 0-2 to Cincinnati, down 3-1 to St. Louis in the same.
Yeah, they had
series.
to get past 2 teams, right? And then to me, I thought once that happened, they were pretty much home free against the Tigers, which they were. Yeah. And then in 2014. They win the 1-game playoff against the Pirates. And then, gosh, I'm trying to remember who they even played in the rest of the playoffs.
Yeah, but then they go to Game 7 anyway, so in the World Series. So it's like every right. step of the way, they've had tough obstacles for sure.
Well, their team in 2014 was not a good hitting team. If it wasn't for Madison Bumgarner, we're talking about 2-3, not 3-5.
Yep.
Right.
That's true. So you mentioned Joey Bart, and there was an article on The Athletic by Bags. You want to talk about that, Eric?
Yeah, Bags went to Oregon to spend a week with Joey Bart, and it was just fascinating. So I just encourage anybody, if you have a subscription to The Athletic, make sure you click on the piece about Joey Bart. Bags did some of his best work, and it explains why he didn't go to New York. It talks about Bart and his preparation and how he already seems to carry himself as a big leaguer. And it's funny, the one thing that stuck out to me was, everybody knows he signed the big contract. So Bart's kind of turned into everybody's agent. Joey Bart is not the only Salem Kaiser volcano who was swinging a Joey Bart bat. There are other guys on the club that are swinging his bats because, he's got all that money. He's fine with it. He doesn't care about the money. He just wants to get up. And it's good insight into the future of the Giants and their catching.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens, but I agree with you. I think he's going to be up with the next couple of years, especially the way he's tearing up the leagues right now. And with Buster Posey going on the shelf with his hip injury, and certainly he'll catch next year and maybe into the next year after that. But we keep talking about the whole first base thing, and if Buster Posey is still with the Giants, because he still has more time on his contract here. But if he's with them long term, he's clearly not going to be catching when Joey Bart comes up. So I think the writing's on the wall that Buster Posey's moving to first base, or he's no longer going to be with the Giants in a couple of years.
It's got to be first base. Can you imagine? And that's why it leads into, I think Belt is a trade possibility in this offseason and possibly next season if the Giants are looking to clear the space for Buster Posey. But I don't even want to look at that. I love Belt, so I don't even want to look at that stuff yet.
Well, let's talk about injuries real quick. We got the 2 main ones right now. Of course, we'll talk about Buster Posey in a second. But Jeff Samardzija has been on the 10-day DL since July 15th. But he had a setback in his last rehab start in AA, and it looks like he's in danger of missing the rest of the season. He met with team doctors on Friday to plot a new course after he felt pain during his last start on Wednesday. Apparently, the first opinion from the doc is like you just need rest for your shoulder soreness, so he's getting a second opinion right now. No one is still expecting surgery at this point, but for a guy who's been injury-free his entire career, same with Madison Bumgarner, same with some of these other guys, Johnny Cueto, well, no, he's had blister problems, but before, other than that, certainly Tommy John is a little bit more major than a blister. The Giants have been a little snake-bitten by these guys who have been, horses in the past, so it looks like he's not going to pitch the rest of this year. Coming into next year, he still has 2 years left on his massive contract. So I'd say shut him down, let him, rest and rehab over the offseason, and just see what happens next year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue that.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's pining for Jeff Samardzija to come out and give up more gopher balls. That's for sure.
I mean, he's the guy that throws hard. You know what's funny? He other than the time he pitched when he first became a starting pitcher, and I guess he made the All-Star team, he's really better suited for like middle relief.
Yeah. No, that's what it seems like at this point in his career. Yeah.
What's that again?
No, it just seems like this point in his career, that's kind of what he's, stationed for. He's kind of destined to be a middle inning reliever at this point.
Yeah, and it's weird, but it's like, he's got the stuff. He's always had the stuff, but his stuff is not good enough to like prevent home runs. That's his biggest problem. I mean, this guy is kind of a home run innings machine, right? I mean, he either can eat innings and he gives up home runs. I don't know what else the guy does.
No, you're right. He's a horse, but he gives up the bomb. So,
like, what's the point of pitching all those innings if he's going to keep giving up 6 runs a game?
Yeah. Well, it's okay. We wish Jeff well. Figure it out, and hopefully he comes back next year strong. Of course, the big news that we talked about throughout the show is Buster Posey getting his hip surgery, and that was kind of a secretive thing that was revealed a little bit more than a week ago, and everybody was, I mean, surprised, but I'd say it's a mild surprise because everybody knows he's been having issues with his lower legs and driving the ball. His power numbers dictate that so. He's still hitting 284, leading the team there. He's still doing certain Buster Posey things. He's one of the best catchers, if not the best catcher in the National League in terms of his pitch calling, his framing, and his caught stealing rates. He's been great there, but it was time to get those bone spurs and other issues that are going on in his hip socket kind of carved out. And he's going to be out 6 to 8 months. So they're talking about he's probably going to miss most of spring training. It could linger into missing the beginning of next season. But I guess, since they've known this for a while, I'm a little surprised they didn't try it, do the surgery a week ago. I know we're just talking about a week. It's not a big deal. They were still in the race technically 2 weeks ago. I know you talked about maybe they should have done their surgery, a month ago. But I think that would have been controversial in terms of, well, why are they giving up so early when they're only 5 games back with 60 to play? But at this point, the Giants made the decision, and so he probably already had the surgery today. I'm kind of excited for it in the sense of something's wrong with Buster Posey. Why isn't he the Buster Posey of old? And maybe this is the answer. We don't know. But if he can come back next year and, hit 15 to 20 bombs and hit 300, maybe we'll see a little bit more of the 2012, 2013 Posey that we know and love.
Yeah. It just, it was pointed out. I was reading, again, a game recap. Saturday might be the last time Hunter Pence and Buster Posey will share an active roster together.
Yeah.
And that was the day Pence hit his homer. And then when Buster came on deck in the 8th inning, and the crowd kind of seemed to recognize it and started, cheering. It's almost, those are who the two Giants leaders have been over the last few years. And, Ryan talked about finding an identity. Posey's been the identity for so long that you have to wonder if it's time to go, not another direction, but let somebody else take the reins.
I think that's definitely going to be the case. I mean, I think all eyes are pointing at Joey Bart, even though the guy's never even, of course, been at the big league level yet. But it looks like everything is going to go in his direction. And you just hope that, Posey gets that hip strength back. But when he does, I mean, like you guys said, I mean, is he really the thing is this, though. You still want to keep him behind the plate because he calls such a good game for the pitchers.
That's always been mine. Yeah, he's so good back there.
Yeah, I mean, his pitch calling and framing and all that is probably worth 5 home runs a year right there over an average catcher. It's just the problem is he's only hit 5 this year, so we're talking maybe he's hit 10 with his defensive compensation. He's a guy who no one ever expected to hit 30, but he certainly has hit 20 plus in the past, and he just can't drive the ball. He's all upper body right now. He still has his hand-eye coordination. He's not he hasn't been that bad this year. He's still leading the team in batting average, technically. So, but he certainly, at this point, it's hard to imagine that he's technically worth the $21 or $22 million he's getting this year. He's a great catcher. He's just not at that level. So hopefully this will cure many of his ills, and he'll come back next year, nice and strong. So let's talk about who's hot, who's not. Who's hot? I got Slater at 6 for his last 18, so he's been playing a lot lately. Obviously, Derek Rodriguez with a 1.60 ERA since the All-Star break. Overall, just having a fantastic season. Probably on his way to getting voted second or third in the Rookie of the Year campaign. Certainly won't win it, but he'll deserve some merit. Derek Holland with a 2.52 ERA since the All-Star break. I mean, it's fantastic. He has been more than an adequate fill-in. That ERA is lower than Madison Bumgarner's. Also since the All-Star break. I believe he's 2.86 or 2.84. Mark Melancon, only 2 earned runs over his last 11 innings pitched. That's a 1.64 ERA. And Steven Duggar he's 5 for 12 with a triple versus the Rangers. So those are the few bright spots of the Giants over the last couple weeks to second half.
Duggar's my just biggest bright spot. I'm looking at some of these numbers. I didn't realize he's already hit 11 doubles on the season. He's in batting average, seems to be improving, and I think the Giants finally found their center fielder. I love watching him out there. The ball goes up, and you don't worry. There's just not that concern that there used to be.
Yeah, just show you how out to lunch I am, because I've been following the A's too. Where's Gorky Hernandez these days now?
He's kind of platooning and left with Austin Slater and Alan Hansen and Hunter Pence and filling in. Gorky's is the fourth outfielder again.
See, unfortunately, those guys could all hold now, right? Because I haven't heard much from Gorky's or Alan Hansen lately. And those two guys were actually, remember for a time, they were actually doing quite a good job on the offensive side.
Yeah, Gorky's is having the year of a lifetime for him. I mean, the guy's got, 13 home runs. He's still batting 246. That's the thing. He when he gets on base, he tends to score, it looks like, but it just, it was kind of a blip. He made the adjustment, but I mean, he's gone through some stretches where he's been like 2 for 22. He had a home run a week or so ago, and it was the first, hit he had in like 20 plate appearances or something like that. So Gorky's is regressing back to what Gorky's is.
Yeah, his batting average, it was hovering around 280, 290 for the first 2-3 months of the season, and he just took a precipitous plunge, and that's been kind of the main reason why he hasn't been used really in the last couple of months. He just went cold as ice. So. And
Alan Hansen can't hit lefties. He just can't. He's so much stronger from the left side of the plate, and they don't want to start him against left-handed pitching. They do sometimes because they need the right-handed bats. But, the Giants are much more willing to go with an outfield of, Gorky's or Pence, Duggar, and McCutchen when they're facing a left-handed pitcher. Now flip it around, you put a left-hander out there. That's when right-hander out there. That's when Hansen's been getting his starts in left field, because he's still, I don't have the splits, but he's still productive from the left side of the plate.
Right. No, he is definitely. I mean, like you guys said, I mean, he's done really well. But I just haven't seen much of the guy in the last month. It just seems like his numbers have just really dropped off.
Yeah, and I think Bochy has just been trying to plug and play, and every day for the last 3 weeks, it was like, what's going to spark the offense? What's going to spark the offense? And I mean, they had players meetings and all that, and I think that factors into it too, is him just trying to find the right combination of players. And the emergence of Steven Duggar has made it possible for guys like Gorky's and Hansen to be a little more expendable.
Well, talking about who's not, I just got a couple on the list right now. We could probably go into a lot more detail with others, but it's a little depressing. Tony Watson, who has been just money for the first half, he's 4.97 ERA since the All-Star break. He's definitely given up a few gopher balls. And Will Smith, to be honest, even though he's been overall outstanding, he's, after he gave up that one home run about a month ago, which was his first home run since a year ago, he's given up several since. Despite the fact, like his last one he gave up after Joe Panic made an error, the fact is he still gave up a home run, even though it wasn't an earned run. So you have guys like that have been kind of slacking off a little bit. And then Brandon Crawford, who was voted to be the starter for the All-Star game for the National League at shortstop, 180 since the All-Star break, 170 in his last 30 days. The problem that was fixed by Gregor Blanco after the first month of the season, where he went on that torrid tear, which really earned him the starting spot on the National League squad. I don't know what's been going on lately. He did have that great 3-run home run the other day, but other than that, he's been just hit and miss most of the time. 180 over the last 30 days, 170 since the All-Star break, or vice versa. It's not good for your starting National League All-Star.
I'll throw Belt in there too. Belt's hitting 190 since coming back from the disabled list. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. He still hasn't homered. He's only walked twice. So it's not like the Belt of old at all. He hasn't been hot either. And Longoria over the last 2 weeks, it looked like Longo was starting to turn it on. He had a good final 2 games in New York, and he's still barely above 200 for the last 2 weeks. But then again, we could go down this whole list, and see every guy is like 250 or less. It's it's pathetic.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Their offense is, like we said, starting pitching has been actually very, very good in the second half. Bullpen obviously has been very shaky, but the offense has been probably the primary issue right now, because when you're scoring 2 runs a game, 3 runs a game max, you have very, very little room for error with your bullpen. So that's been the issue. All right.
I mean, you could almost say the whole team has been cold, right? Except for Duggar. I mean, who's producing offensively right now?
Slater's the only one I can think of.
Offensively, it hasn't been very good lately for anyone. Not at all.
No.
I mean, boy, I could sort of see now. It's funny. Before I came on with you guys, I was kind of not feeling so sorry for the front office, and now I kind of am feeling sorry for the front office, because these guys can't win. I mean, they just can't win. I mean, I know we're not going to talk about the team across the bay, but they seem to have things going in a totally different direction, and they don't exactly play in a ballpark that's conducive to hitting either. But
No.
the ball does travel in Oakland better than it does in San Francisco. I don't know, but I mean, somehow, some way, they're going to have to figure out a way to. I mean, the bottom line is, over the last we talked 45 minutes plus, they're going to have to figure out a way to start getting that farm system back in order. Bottom line.
They do.
Well, that's you bring up a good point, and the question becomes, and we could do like an entire hour show on this, but the question becomes, are the Giants just that bad at identifying and developing talent?
Yes, they are.
I think they really are.
You know what the Giants are good at, though? I'll say this: the Giants are so good, though, when it comes to finding players off the scrap heap. Right?
Yes.
They've done it. They've done it historically. They've done it again this year. I mean, look at. Like Derek Rodriguez is one example, right? Because he didn't come through the farm system. Wasn't he traded through the minor leagues, right?
Yeah,
they signed him to a free agent minor league contract in the offseason.
Yeah, he was last with Minnesota, right?
Yeah. Right, but that still is my point, that he is not originally from their farm system. He's from another farm system.
Correct.
So, Alan Hansen's been a great find. Pablo Sandoval, granted, he was once a Giant, but he comes back, and so the guys that are actually making the little money are the ones really producing. It's interesting for the Giants when they do find diamonds in the rough, they succeed. But again, as we talked about before, they get all these reward contracts, and it just messes everything up. So it's just an imbalance and a balance, if you will, of taking the guys that succeed with little money and the guys who don't succeed and get paid a lot. So it's really frustrating.
Yeah,
it's you watch this team, and it's just one of those things where you don't understand why these guys aren't producing. And I totally get what you were saying, Ryan. Like, before you didn't feel sorry for the front office, and now you kind of do, because let's be honest, the guys are not performing on the field, and there's no magic fix for something like that. The scrap heap finds are fantastic. We love those guys. Even Derek Holland is another one. But when it comes to keeping their top talent productive, it just doesn't seem to be something they can do.
And I think what's interesting, too, is if you look at the Giants prior to 2010, remember their payroll was kind of different. The Giants would always kind of never really go for it. They would sort of always find themselves signing guys, maybe the Aaron Rowans, maybe somebody who they thought...
Edgardo Alfonso
actually was a good player until he came to the Giants, but that's a lot of guys. They would sign certain players, but they wouldn't really kind of go all in. And in fact, if you want to really go back to the Giants' history, if you look back at the Giants teams of the 1960s, all of whom finished like second to the Dodgers almost on an annual basis, they were always missing one extra player. But for some reason, the owner back then, Horace Stoneham, just didn't want to pull the trigger on a needed deal to get that whoever player it was, whether they needed one more outfielder, they needed one more starting pitcher, probably a starting pitcher because the Giants
generally it was starting pitching. Yeah,
they were just missing one guy, and they had so many second place finishes. And then the Giants win these World Series, and I think now they come to a point where they feel they have to compete, and because like we said over the last hour, they can't find guys, they get desperate, and so they start overpaying for these guys that they shouldn't. So there's got to be a way. Hopefully this will be the off season where they figure out we got to stop doing this and stop just throwing money out to people just because they did well somewhere else. They're going to do the same thing here, because that's not the case. And the bigger question is going to be what's going to happen to the future of guys like Bruce Bochy and Sabian and Bobby Evans. You guys may know this already. I think all those guys, this is their last year, isn't it? That they're under contract for all three guys.
Bochy still has another year. Yeah. Yeah, these guys still have
another
year. So.
But Bochy's really at the point where I really think he should consider retirement, just not only for his own, the fact of what he's done as a manager already, but also his age and his health. I mean, yeah. I don't know what the guy has left to prove at this point. I mean, to me, it's funny. I listened to one of my colleagues who's a talk show host, Bonte Hill. He thinks Bochy is a borderline Hall of Fame candidate. I think the guy's a lock because the World Series. I mean, come on. Tony La Russa made the Hall of Fame, and that guy to me is super overrated.
Yes. But the thing with Bochy is having one more year on the contract, both Sabian and Bochy, the Giants are going to have that same mentality. Okay, let's give it one more shot. And if this doesn't work out, maybe there'll be time. And Larry Baer, I read one of Tim Kawakami's columns. That was a mouthful on The Athletic, and my personal feelings for Tim aside, it was interesting that he pointed out that that's probably what Larry Baer said to him. We're gonna try again in 2019, try to keep the formula of plug and play, and if stuff goes south again, maybe then they'll consider a full rebuild. But I don't think it's gonna happen until Bochy and Sabian are out the door.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, I just really think, I hope for the Giants' sake they can figure something out, because I just don't see the team able to compete. They're just still so, like, again, to compare it to like baseball and history, the Giants are like the dead ball era. They really are. I mean, they just don't have the means by which to keep up with everybody else.
Well, on that note,
on the note that the Giants suck right now.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's not that they suck. I guess they're
mediocre
they're
at best. They're average at best. Yeah,
mediocre at best.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why they're hovering around. They're 2 games under 500. If they, closed out that game against Texas, they'd be 500 right now. And that's just the thing. Their curse is 500 this year. They haven't been more than 5 games above or 5 games below, and that's just where they are. That's who they are.
All right, here's the positive before we wrap it up. The Giants went 64-98 in 2017. By virtue of their win yesterday, they have 65 wins on the season.
Yeah, more than last year already.
Right, and it's not even September. So, hey, At least the Giants were not horrible this season, and they were just mediocre.
At least they're better. That should be their next slogan next year. Instead of, it doesn't get more SF or one of those lame ones. It could be like, well, at least we're better. At least we're average.
Right.
That would sell well. That would definitely hashtag. We're at least average. All right. Well, coming up.
This much, guys. I'll be on. I'll be rather at the Giants games. This series coming up against Arizona. It's beginning tonight.
Oh, awesome.
So, we'll see how much fight they have, because if they can at least, let's put it this way, if they're able to take 2 out of 3 in that series, which is a possibility, they could since they're at home. It doesn't obviously give them any better chance of a playoffs, but it does at least show that they continue to improve and they're not as bad as they were last year.
Yeah, I mean, the irony is that, tonight they have Corbin against Stratton, so, the chances on paper don't look very good for the Giants, but you never know. Stratton had figured things out with his, by the way, Ryan Vogelsong had coached him down in AAA in terms of his mechanics, and it seemed to work pretty well in his first start. He came out and pitched 5 innings of shutout, and I think he gave up 2 runs in the 6th against New York, so he was much better his last start. We'll see what he does tonight. But the irony is, in no way to everyone listening am I ever condoning or suggesting that the Giants should not play well because they don't want the Dodgers to win the West. But it's just the irony of Arizona is the team that the Dodgers are trying to catch. You know what I mean? So you always look at that whole, wow, if they swept the Diamondbacks or took 2 out of 3 and the Dodgers won the West by a game, you'd go like, damn it. But, I mean, I would never suggest that the Giants perform under their capabilities. That's not, maybe going into the very last 3 games of the season, maybe I would suggest that. But other than that, I don't, because the Giants still need to perform well and do well here. But they got 3 against Arizona at home, and then the Mets roll in for 3 as well before we record next week. So, even if they swept both series, they're still not making the playoffs. They got to win pretty much 90% of their games for anyone out there who actually thinks they still have a chance, because you see that on social media still. Well, there are only 8 games. It's mathematically possible.
They have 30 games left. I mean,
but people, come on. Yeah.
Well, here's the interesting thing about the rest of the schedule, and I think it's kind of neat. They have 30 games left, and every Thursday for the rest of the season, they're off.
Oh, okay.
So they have every series is a 3-game series. They have 6 at home, 6 on the road, 6 at home, 6 on the road, and then 6 at home to end the season. And it's just a weird scheduling quirk that they have all this rest time during the end of the season, and it really doesn't seem to matter.
Well, that'll do it for episode 151 of the TortureCast. You can follow us collectively on Twitter at TortureCast. Like us on Facebook. You'll find us there. Go to TortureCast.com. That's where we post our episodes and other blogs and other information as well. You can follow us individually. Eric at 2OutHits. That's with the number 2. Myself at ChadK21. And for our special guest, Ryan Leong, at Ryan Leong. So look him up there, and he'll be at the series, of course, this week against Arizona. So either of you two have anything to pimp or tell everyone about?
I'm good. Ryan, you got anything?
No, I'm good as well. I hope to come on with you guys again, possibly next week. I'll be at the A's games. I'll be taking on the Yankees, so maybe I can join you guys. If we do start right at around 12 o'clock Pacific, then I can join you guys for a while.
Well, and the A's have a big series against Houston, right, starting tonight. So, I mean,
That's
I know
right, yeah.
we won't talk about the A's. I know you follow them and you're a fan of them, but they've been just the Cinderella team this year. Just been a great story in Major League Baseball. Game and a half behind the Astros, coming out of nowhere after the second half started. So it's a great story, certainly in baseball and certainly in the Bay Area. So, and again, Eric and I have talked about this before. We have no hate for the A's. We're just sort of indifferent for them and actually wish them success most of the time. It's not like they're the Dodgers. Like the Dodgers, I wish would go 0-162. I don't wish that upon the A's.
Yeah, yeah. And I'll say this: that's the prevailing attitude I think Giants fans have had on the A's forever. I mean, I do consider myself an A's fan, although I've kind of been a bigger fan at times than others, just given personal things that I'm dealing with as far as like covering the team. But my dad, who's always been a Giants fan, said the same thing. He doesn't have any hate towards the A's. He's just kind of indifferent towards them. And I think it just comes from a lot of it, again, being the fact that the A's and Giants are very 2 different franchises. There's similarities in the fact that they're longtime histories, right? But they kind of operate on different planes.
Yeah, I mean, I have Dodgers fans that are, friends that are like, oh, the Dodgers are killing the Giants. They're this far ahead. There's, just kind of that kind of stuff throughout the season, and it does burn me a little bit. Then I got my A's friends going, hey, man, what do you think about the A's doing so much better than the Giants? And I'm like, well, good for them. Like, yay, that's fine. I don't want them to do poorly. I'm not rooting for the Astros or any other teams in the West. That's great. I think it's good for Bay Area baseball. I really do. I think it's good. I don't want the A's to leave either. So if any success will increase their chances of staying in Oakland or the Bay Area, then I'm all for it. So, good for them. They're fun to watch. They're a fun team to watch. They're young. They got a low payroll. It's like Billy Ball happening again, or Moneyball happening again. It's very weird, but it's good to see.
Billy Ball was a whole different type.
I know
of baseball.
That was a whole different thing. That just kind of came out from my younger days. Billy Ball.
You're old, Chad. We get it. You're old.
I'm a little old, so. All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 151. Thanks for listening. Again, follow us on all the sites I told you about. But until then, until episode 152, we'll see you then. Boom. Again, I want to thank special guest Ryan Leong for joining us today in episode 151 of the TortureCast. He graciously gave us 6 little short interview clips that he recorded after yesterday's game against the Rangers on Sunday. We have clips from Bruce Bochy, Derek Holland, Steven Duggar, Rangers manager Jeff Bannister, losing pitcher Giovanni Gallardo, and, of course, Elvis Andrews, their shortstop, after yesterday's game. So I'm going to go ahead and tack on those interviews to the end of the podcast here. Enjoy.
I think every day has been an opportunity. When I first got called up, I think just trying to take it day by day and, just try to check a box and keep the line moving. Just really simplify it. If I can do one thing a day to help the team win, that's a box that I want to check. So, that's just kind of how I go about it.
You always pull for guys who, have a bounce back year or, go through their struggles. It's all about dealing with adversity with good athletes, and he's been very determined to show that he can pitch, and as I said, he's more than done that.
The curse of the seventh inning. That's where we're going to leave it at. I mean, I remember we've talked before, it was the first inning. So now we've got a new curse, and that's the seventh. We're going to try to get through that. But, these guys, they've continued to keep pushing me and pulling for me and everything. So I just got to continue to keep trying to make pitches.
Veteran National League pitcher, familiar with the situation. They tried to go up and in, didn't get it there, and Duggar hit the ball into the gap to score both runs. That's a situation where we don't let them score those 2 runs. We're probably still playing, but it's how fragile these games are, and one mistake can beat you.
That situation, just being in the National League, you got the pitcher on deck. It's a little bit frustrating, but get the guy at a 2-2 count. I want to put him away. I want to put him away and let the pitcher come up and lead off the next inning. Unfortunately, it just he just spun and stayed up in the zone, and he took advantage of it.
We run into a good team like Oakland. They're playing really hard and they're pitching good. So I think we kind of let that carry away into this series, and that's where we're gonna miss it. But it is what it is, and just trying to scratch it a little bit, turn the page, and be ready for the season, for the series at home.
A big thank you to everybody for listening to the TortureCast, the podcast by and for fans of the San Francisco Giants. Follow us on Twitter at TortureCast. You can also like us on Facebook or check out our blog at TortureCast.com. I also want to say thank you to Ashcon and Bailey for letting us use their song Feeling Like a Giant for our intro. For Ben Lee and Chad King, my name is Willie Dills saying, we'll see you next time.